Next, we have a world of POS possibilities. So yes, as you can imagine, it's about how the point of sale can become the key to customer engagement and innovation. The experience, again, post-COVID, we have people returning to stores in a post-pandemic world. So the point of service becomes really, really important again in the customer interaction. So how can the point of sale be better leveraged as a point of service or even a point of serendipity, where customers are wowed with a cutting-edge CRM, loyalty, and innovation? How do we capture engagement and enable the POS to be the beginning of a captivating customer journey? That's what it's all about, an experience, just like Money 2020. It's not a conference, it's an experience, and how we absorb the experience affects what we're going to do the rest of the day, or how we're going to act, or how we're going to proceed. The same with brands. So on stage today, we have our very own Keisha Allison, who will be moderating this panel discussion, with Nancy Zayed of MagicCube, Christian Perkner of EMSA, Vidya Peters of Marqeta, and Dan Rolick of Go Crypto.
Well, hello, everybody. We are here for an interesting conversation. I love the play on words to talk about the possibilities of point of sale. I'm here with our lovely panelists. We have some great perspectives. MagicCube, right? We have the European Mobile Payment Systems Association, Marqeta, and GoCrypto.com. So I think with all the different perspectives, we're about to really shine some light on what's to be. So before we get into the future, right, I want to talk a little bit about that meeting of digital and physical right now. We're coming out of COVID, and some of us are, we are yearning for the in-person experiences, but let's not fake it. Digital is still there. So I thought maybe starting the conversation with some context on what are some interesting examples of where digital and physical meet at the point of sale for the checkout experience. And I would love you to give me examples that pique your interest, things that you find super interesting. And let's kick off there before we get into kind of what the future holds. So maybe Nancy, I start with you.
That's not fair.
You kept looking at me, so that's what happens.
Well, it is interesting times, and it's really exciting times. And what we're seeing here from our customers, the ones with the brick and mortar, as well as newcomers, and we're seeing very, very good and encouraging trends. We're seeing that there is a recognition of the established, merchants that have the dedicated hardware, that they are bogged down, whether it's a chip shortage or whether, the huge investment that goes into it. And then, the rigidity of hardware, which is just part of hardware. And now they're seeing the opportunity of soft POS, of secure, like the iAccept platform, soft POS, and how it actually enables them to scale up and down and go through experiences of blind busting, of new services that delight their customers when they are, in physically there. Now, the newcomers among our customers, the ones that are completely digital, we are seeing and they are seeing and experiencing the opportunity of a fast go-to-market of a secure and a compliant solution. So I think the possibilities are there, and I think this is really, really exciting times.
Yeah. I mean, Christian, we had a little chat back and forth and banter about loyalty, right, in this space and what all that means. Let's talk about some of the examples. We were having some fun discussing. What does it look like from your point of view? You have that mobile perspective, and that's definitely influencing the checkout experience.
That's right. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to represent 15 of Europe's finest mobile payment solutions. So at EMSA, we have Swish from Sweden, or Twin from Switzerland. There's about 90 million QR code payers in Europe that are a part of EMSA. And the reason they're so successful in their markets Some have over 80, 90% of the population using them. It's exactly for that reason. So there's great use cases at the point of sale that are better than cash and cards. And just to highlight one is to do payment and loyalty in one step. So when you're at the point of sale, you basically do one scan of a code, and then the loyalty information, the coupons, the vouchers, your lunch checks, the 20% discount on hot food items, they're all automatically and magically deducted, and you just walk out. You no longer pay. Yeah. It's like the Uber experience when you just get out of the car.
Yeah.
And these are some of the examples that some of our EMSA members have pulled off. And since they're then better than cash and cards, that's when the takeoff happens. And maybe lastly, COVID, you mentioned it. About every European now knows how to scan QR codes because of COVID's check-in, check-out, whatever. And that helped tremendously now that the world's back open again to lose the fear of doing payment with optical means. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to that last part. I'm American, clearly, but my parents now know how to use their phone in ways that it didn't. It's not just for making a call. That's right. So they get it. Moving on, curious, what are we seeing on the Marqeta perspectives in that view?
Yeah. Keisha, it's a very exciting time in fintech, and we feel like we are sitting at the intersection of so much innovation and money movement that we get to see at Marqeta. So happy to share some perspectives here. I think that the 2 years have probably been the biggest digital transformation accelerant as we know it. And while we have returned to real life as we remembered, nothing is the same in payments. In those 2 years, as an example, we've seen the explosion of various payment methods, such as buy now, pay later. And the most beautiful part is as people are returning to the stores, what would have originally been a clunky experience, right? If you think about how that payments would have been designed at the POS earlier, it would have been fill out this form, choose how you want to pay, maybe then connect your card. All of that's gone because in the last 2 years, we have learned so much in buy now, pay later and making that process seamless. Now, for example, we have the Klarna card where you can take a card out of your wallet, just like it's sitting next to your debit and credit cards, and swipe it at any store, any POS of your choice, and choose to pay in installments over time. I don't think that would have happened 2 years ago if we hadn't seen all of this innovation happen. And I was just talking to Dan backstage, and he has a phenomenal example that I'll let him touch on, which I think just blows my mind, and he's built it all in Slovenia. So, Dan, over to you.
Great transition.
Catch it.
Thank you. I mean, look, my opinion is that that all the hardware being used at a merchant is getting obsolete, you know, and I think we're really not getting how fast the whole transition is happening. And today we're talking about soft POS. I'm telling you, in 2 years, nobody will actually talk about soft POS anymore. And Visa announced MasterCard and everybody else, you know, they had their part of history. I'm really thinking that crypto and all kind of digital payments are now coming into a game. Look, this event is being totally different than a few years ago, I think. And I think that the things that are now being developed are not even understandable to us. And let's see what the future will show. I don't want to talk too much about these things and be, you know, a genie. But yeah, I think there are many use cases coming that will disrupt many of existing things.
We're going to ask for some of those use cases in a little bit, so you know, don't forget. But you know, I think you brought up BNPL, and I'm thinking about some of these new products, right, that are coming into the payment space and how they might really be impacting consumer behavior, right, and their expectations. So, Nancy, I thought maybe I'd start with you, and also maybe if you had kind of comments on the soft POS, kind of, yeah.
I have a lot of comments.
I'm sure you do. That's why I went to you.
Right. So the opportunities that soft POS, and there are multiple products, I accept is one of them. It opens up the doors and for inclusion.
Yep.
So right now it's like all of us, almost everyone has a smartphone. and therefore their ability to establish their business, their ability to accept at card-present trades, tap the phone with PIN or without PIN, it doesn't matter. But now you can become a merchant when previously you couldn't really because of the investments in hardware. And I agree with the panelists here that traditional or dedicated hardware will continue, but it's going to play a significantly smaller role or part. Now, when we talk about the experiences that comes, and the possibilities of POS, the agility of software that's running on the POS, you are able to update it over the air. You are able to create the new experiences without the pain and the logistics that are. So whether you accept, let's say soft POS right now, maybe it just accepts the brands, but there's nothing stopping it, and we actually do, accept crypto, accept loyalty, accept, so delight the customers, create the trust, because it has to be secure, create the trust between the merchant and the customer, and the loyalty and the affinity will continue to be there. So soft POS, in my view, or in our view, is actually about inclusion and about democratization, secure democratization of the acceptance experience.
Yeah. I mean, we're soft POS is one of kind of example, and if we think about some of the products, we mentioned BNPL. I'm curious, what's your kind of view on the customer expectation, the experience around it, things that you guys have been seeing? We talked about inclusion, right? There's a little bit of inclusion in that as well, right? Being able to maybe make purchases that you weren't able to before because you're able to break up those payments. So curious what you're seeing from the customer perspective, Vidya, on that end.
I think Buy Now, Pay Later has shown us that consumers are demanding choice.
Yeah.
In terms of financial products, we've had very few. We've had the same for decades. It's been prepaid debit credit, maybe installment loans. All of those have been cumbersome. And I think what BNPL has shown us is that if you can make a frictionless, delightful customer experience that serves an unmet need, right, which is short-term financing at a much lower cost than a traditional credit card, you can serve a market that has been underserved in the past. Now, the next level of it is if you move to crypto and blockchain, then you can do that in a fraction of the time, a fraction of the cost. So I think BNPL is just one of those answers that we are seeing addressing an unmet need. There are going to be more. There's going to be an evolution of those cases. At the end of the day, it comes down to the consumer experience and serving them faster, cheaper, more effectively for their specific use case.
Yeah. I mean, you keep teeing up our friend Don. You mentioned crypto. I'm curious your view on the kind of question on how some of these new products, right, that we're seeing in this space, you feel that there might be impacting customer behaviors and experiences.
When we talk about crypto, again, there is so many question marks as well. How this is going to work and what is possible, what is not, and regulations and all these things. But I think somehow we're coming out of the Wild West, and the adoption is really happening, and the most important thing that I see when it comes to the POS is you need to understand we came from crypto space, and then we went into traditional to understand how the existing POS and payments are working. And we were like, are you kidding me? Setting up the POS, all the processes, acquirers, issuers, schemes, fees, support, hardware. And then we said, well, this is crazy. We need to change this. So I will not go deep. We could talk about this for hours. But definitely through blockchain, you have so many possibilities. And with crypto, you can do things 24/7, cross-border, much cheaper, faster, without the unnecessary over-regulating things and just closing a monopoly for your playground in general. So yeah, I think crypto is really a future, but it's so difficult. It's complex. People need to spend time to understand it, years. And once they get it,
I think we're getting there.
I hope so.
We are getting there. I'll just add on to what Dan said. We saw in a recent survey, 80% of consumers now say they want to transact in crypto at the point of sale.
There you go.
Right? It's no longer a novelty, like a little investment you keep somewhere and play around with it on day trading, but it's entering the mainstream life, and they want that to be as a consistent form of their wallet.
Yeah. I mean, Christian, what are you kind of... I'm going to break you two up. Do I have to change your seats?
I think I have to start disagreeing with him more.
I mean, jumping in there, Christian, from your perspective, right, of the Mobile Payments Association, what are you seeing?
Payment is a highly regulated market, as you said. And so you need a license to issue a payment instrument. You need a license to acquire one. You need a license to hold money where it's in flux. And so as long as these rules and rails persist, it's a play for who's here, for the licensed acquirers and issuers to grapple with how to make it better, cheaper, faster, how to earn money still when regulators cut you down to a 0.2 basis points. And these are the traditional questions. Now, if we could step out of those and say, how could this work without any of this legacy? That's when it gets truly exciting. It gets exciting from a technology perspective, from a commercial perspective, and of course from a legal perspective, because in the end you are in the real world. And if in some jurisdictions selling a crypto means selling an asset, not paying but selling an asset, that means suddenly it's taxable. So how do you want to explain to your end consumer that he's now being taxed because he's spending some of his assets? So in the end, these are fundamental questions to figure out, are we moving from world A as we know it today, which is highly relevant, huge scale, and very critical, into this new world, and where do the chips fall? Who wins, who loses? What needs to happen to really make this mainstream? And we're really close to it. The brightest minds on the planet are working on that, frankly. If you ask any halfway decent developer if you would rather work on authorization capture of a four-party payment scheme, or if you'd rather build something blockchain-based, they're all over there. So since the brightest minds are on it, it will be really exciting going forward. But at least as of now today, of course, the legacy world is still way more relevant in all of our lives today.
I think the tax component that you just raised is a really important one, that people don't realize the tax component of how it's treated as an asset. And I think unless regulation changes there, that's one more hurdle in crypto really entering the mainstream and living alongside other currencies. That's a huge hurdle. So it's amazing to see the growth it's had despite a lot of the tax hurdles that you have in the background.
Oh, for sure.
But
this
brings
Nancy.
up an interesting point, though, like really interesting points here. So when you, and just speaking from a technology perspective, from engineering perspective, any time of the day you tell an engineer you want to do processing, or blockchain, of course blockchain, because it's new, and we want to learn. So this is, so adopting a technology because it is a technology is good, but it needs to serve the end customer, protect the merchant, and so on. Now, when we look at the big tech, Apple is now in play. I want to ask us a question. Let's ask ourselves, how come with all of that computing power, with all of that engineering cycles, how come they're not in crypto, right? So there has to be progress is imminent. It has to, and blockchain is part of it. But we want to be careful in adopting technologies, and bear in mind that we are responsible for it. That regardless of what the results are, we are responsible for it. We have to be held accountable. Everybody in the chain has to be accountable, has to be identifiable, and this is why, yes. At the pause, we need to focus not necessarily on the technology, but on the experience of the user, on the new opportunities at the point of sale, delighting the user, making sure it is seamless, it is scalable, and it is secure. So let's put that in mind as we evaluate technologies and I just wanted to add this.
No, good point. And I think the technology you had mentioned in your response, Christian, technology is kind of where it gets it can get very interesting, and it does. So this brings us to autonomous stores, and we're really going to talk about possibilities here, right? I thought we're having this discussion about the future of POS. Let's tie this one in there. Amazon Go exists right now. That's a thing. It's out there. Let's talk about the future and the evolution of the checkout experience as it relates to the interesting technologies that we were just mentioning, right? So blockchain, crypto, AI, AR and VR. What are some of the ways that you see these technologies being leveraged to create an experience that we just have not seen before? I'm looking at you, so I'm going to start with you, Don.
Blockchain is probably one of the safest technologies out there. You cannot hack it. Scalability, it's definitely a question when it comes to billions of transactions, but that will definitely change. Make it seamless and simple. It has so many advantages that the traditional payments don't have it. The only problem is it's extremely complex. When it comes to the checkout, I'm continuously just thinking how to make it so easy that I don't have to wait in line at all, ever, for whatever. And if I can do this with crypto or not. I know adoption is going to take a while. Who cares? We have years at least, as long as Russia is not here. But the thing is, technology should be used to make things simple. But from 1959, when Visa was created, I'm sorry, payments became more complex. And I hope that the payments will be in a way you go and you check out, or you won't get loyalty in one QR code. Of course, you have identity. Create an identity, pay with the identity on blockchain, whatever. It doesn't need to be anymore a phone, whatever. It can be a gadget, But again, I'm just talking what everything is possible. People will say what they want to have. Still, 99% payments are being done through Visa and MC. People still want to have the cards. We need to create the cards. But one last thing to tell. I don't know if everybody knows this. 99.5% of all the money laundering, it's still being happened through the banks. Only 0.5 through the crypto. And the crypto is getting more and more and more and more regulated. I'm just saying, crypto, you can follow every transaction. You know which money is being blacked, like in matter of stolen. You can stop the money flow. It's crazy what you can do. I'm a young guy in a way. I still dream, so I can.
You can dream.
Say something like this, yeah.
No, I think that there's something there to you. You mentioned identity, right? And I think I'm going to cue back to Nancy in that space. And when we think about ways that the idea of the autonomous store and how that might have some tech implications, right? You're the CTO, so I'm going to hit you with a little bit of a technical question, but how does that kind of change the infrastructure, right? When you're layering some of these, is there things that we should be you're kind of thinking about in that aspect?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Because with AR, VR, this impacts the shopping experience. Okay. When we come to AI, now we're getting closer to the acceptance, right? To actually get accept. Now, AI is basically as good as the data that comes in. There's always a learning curve until there is I in the A, right? Right. So there's always a period of false positive. And this is what I mean. It doesn't mean we don't adopt it. It means that we need to be careful, keep our eye on the ball. And the ball is, accountability, scalability, seamless and frictionless, and how we make sure that we have the evidence, we know what happened in every transaction. And when you say it can be traced or whatever, I still try to answer the question, why is it that the currency of choice for ransomware is crypto, right? there's got to be a reason, that this is the preferred one. So it means that we need to do more work. We need to do more work to get there. But about the autonomous experience generally, there is room. This is about the possibilities. This is what's going to enable a customer to just walk in with, to merchant, and the customer will be recognized in terms of loyalty, in terms of, extra benefits that the customer gets, and that's because of the AI, for example. So that's my view. I do respect the technologies, all the new technologies, but we have to keep an eye on the entirety of the chain. Yep. That's all.
Can I just... The biggest threat from the technology side, the biggest threat, it's a device that you look at it 1,000 times per day. That device makes you a superhuman. It's a phone.
Yeah.
But that device knows so much more about you, your habits, your family, everything around you than a payment. You understand?
It depends on the architecture, though. So, there is an architecture where you have the PII, and there is an architecture that does not have the PII because it's focusing on the security. So, it depends. And then also, as we talk about new technologies and new ways of acceptance, we have to bear in mind the merchant. The merchant has invested so much in the back end, in the compliance, in all of this. We need to maximize the return on investment for the existing infrastructure, expand it in a way that doesn't break what has already been achieved, but rather augment it. So not a word against the adoption of new technologies, but rather when we adopt it, we have to be cognizant of what's at stake.
No, I think that's a really valid point. Christian, from your perspective, right, like mobile world, how is this all playing into the idea of the autonomous store and kind of what's next, right, in the checkout experience? Again, I think this is another one that you were excited to kind of jump into, so curious to see what we have there.
That's right. And since we've been talking about ways to pay, payment means you get your goods and services and you part with your money. If you do that with paper, namely the currency, it's a very manual process, but it's anonymous because there's nothing to trace. If you go to the card rails, there's decades of really well thought through technical rails and legal rails to do just walk out. For example, you can get your card on file somewhere. The merchant has a token that's secure to pull money from you. That's a legal and technical and commercial infrastructure that's around. That's how we do our Netflix, right? You just put your card on file, and there's an infrastructure to make sure this happens fairly securely and seamlessly. Now, if we go into the fully digital world with no more card rails, we're still missing that. There is no rules and rails today to get to the checking account directly in the same way with efficiency. When you look at Europe, since we're over-regulating ourselves constantly, we have the PSD2 and PSD3 and whatever's. You need logins and passwords and TANs, and your tokens expire after X many days. So we're making it even more complex now to create a great checkout experience. And that's clearly what we have to fix quickly, because otherwise this whole new fantasy won't play out, right?
Yeah.
If the rules and rails are not there to create seamless checkout, you can't do Amazon Go with a PSD2. You cannot. You can have a token for 90 days, and if you pay something that's 31 euros instead of 29, it's above the magic 30 euro mark, and then you have to confirm somewhere. And so that's where it's so key whenever you regulate, and we do that a lot in this continent, that we do it in a way where we can still innovate. And that, I think, is what you have to keep your eye on. Right?
Yeah. No, it's a great point, right? Like, that is your basis for the experience you're able to provide.
Exactly.
So I think it's well said. Vidya, your point of view on it.
So I feel that mobile payments, digital wallets, here to stay, almost old news. I think data shows adoption is as high as 80% in markets like the UK and Australia. So no question there. I think the next frontier here is what do you bring to a physical POS experience that's uniquely you? And I think biometrics is a completely unexplored area. We talked a little bit about the Amazon Go experience, but even that has a ton of friction in the process. You've got to download the app, you have to register yourself, you have to put in all of the payment information in the back end. Now imagine if you could just wave your hand and it already has all of the information, the payment methods behind in the system about you, and all you have to do is choose. And you choose the payment method, the payment type, because it recognizes who you are. What's really interesting also is putting spend controls in there. Imagine if you could say that, hey, put my gambling limit at, X $100 a month, or, the alcohol limit at a certain amount. Those are areas that are not explored yet, and I think it's putting control back in the hands of the consumer. I also think this would address fraud in a big way, because your identity is not tied to a set of numbers or a card, but it's tied to your biometrics, which is really hard to replicate.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit just now, right, about the the global nature of things, and you'd mentioned the over-regulating in in Europe and what we do on the continent. As we talk globally, and I'm curious because you guys operate in different spaces, I'm curious in the different geo markets what you're seeing from a POS perspective. Are you seeing things that are being tailored, right, for local regions, or are you seeing maybe more of a global approach on that? I'm going to start with you, Christian.
Right. We had the lucky experience a few months ago to go live in Nigeria with Blue Code, which is the company I work with in my day job, right? And very, very different in the way how banks and merchants interact to make that work. There's a Nigerian interbank settlement system, which is an instant system. So while we are talking, it's happening somewhere else. That's where it starts. But yes, it was all through soft POS and mobile, so there's no other hardware around. And what was puzzling to us was we were bringing the showing and scanning of the QR codes, and that was well received. But the magic happened when we pressed the QR code and we showed an 8-digit number. For us, this was like, and for the market there, this was disruptive. So when we asked, why do you prefer typing in 8 digits if you could just scan it? And the reason was, oftentimes families send someone to shop someplace, and then they can call and pay. They can say, type in 5927-6432. The cashier types it in, and it's paid. So for us here, we're like, this is modern, this is what we do. But it solves a use case where you don't want to send the person that's shopping for you away with your card. You don't want to send them with your phone, and you don't want to send them with cash.
Yeah.
What? You want to send them by transmitting a brief number. So, as you said, the world's a global place, and we're all getting closer to each other, but at the same time, there's use cases and value propositions in many corners of the world that you wouldn't anticipate if you had just gone with it with one size fits all. Right?
Yeah. No, good point. You said cards, so I'm going to look at you and ask you to kind of, Vidya, chime in there. What are you seeing, right, globally, kind of the approach from POS? Are things being looked at more, by region? What's your thoughts there?
So as Christian mentioned, the world is very different, and you see that in the numbers, and the adoption numbers. So things like digital wallets, mobile payments, very high adoption in markets like in Europe and Australia. US lags in that. We've seen the use of cash drop off dramatically, particularly in Northern Europe, less so in Southern Europe. And so a couple of things. One is some of these adoption behaviors are changing. They're enduring change, but the rate at which they're changing varies by geo. Second, no argument that people still want a very smooth customer experience. So it's all moving in the direction of that. Third, we're watching crypto and the settlement of crypto come to POS. That behavior is here to stay. What's shocking is small businesses now. 30% of small businesses want to accept crypto at their point of sale, which just blows my mind because 2 years ago, they wouldn't have even talked about crypto. So those are probably the three biggest changes we are watching at the macro level.
Yeah, great transition. We're running kind of low on time, but I did want to talk a little bit about small businesses. Maybe Vidya, I go to you really quickly. What's the future look like, do you think, from your point, for e-commerce and SMBs? We talk a lot of the conversation is always consumer, right, focused, but I'm really curious what it means for small businesses.
It means growth and bigger opportunities, more volumes, and this is what we are actually seeing. Now, the technology on mobile devices is kind of getting the e-commerce and mobile commerce, getting the lines a little blurry, but it's still at card not present rates, which is high. But then when you have the actual, card present rates, the ones that make the difference to the merchant, those are the ones that, with the soft POS solutions on mobile devices, we're seeing that this actually is the experience that is needed from a business, not just the user experience. There's the business. You got to sustain the business. When we talk about global versus local and the differences, the fact that software is agile, and we're seeing in less developed countries where cash is king, it's actually more going to digital. So we're increasing the volumes there. And for the traditional one, we are seeing expansion similarly to what, like Netflix did. When it was pegged to the hardware, DVD, and I'm dating myself here, then goes to software, just streaming, huge consumption growth, logarithmic expansion in the business. It's the same thing when we think about the future or the possibilities of POS.
Yeah. I remember DVDs, so don't worry. You're not alone there. I had a subscription too.
I remember other things.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, we're at time. I could have stayed here all day with you, but really quickly, 2 seconds each. What does it take to be a winner in POS? I'm going to start with you, Don.
One more time.
What does it take to be a winner in POS as we're looking into the future? Give me your 2 seconds if you can.
No POS.
There you go. No POS. Vidya.
An amazing customer experience. Get through as quickly as possible with as many options that are right for you as possible.
Christian.
Payment actually vanishing.
Now that's one.
What was that?
Payment
Payment
vanishes.
actually vanishing. You won't even notice anymore.
Okay.
Now there's a future for you.
It's agility, flexibility, seamless, and scalable experiences that protects the investments that are there, and it expands it.
Well, thank you all for chatting with me today. I had questions I did not get to, but that's what it is when you're talking to rock stars like yourselves that are opinionated. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.